Hello and welcome to this new edition of the Foojay Podcast. Today we are traveling to England for the Manchester JUG.
Welcome to the Foojay Podcast, all your news about OpenJDK.
In this podcast we introduce a new topic. From now on we will once per month fly around the world virtually to meet the people who organize Java user groups.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Bullock. I'm a full-stack developer at Apparito, a health tech company, and I'm a co-organizer of the Manchester Java community.
Hi, I'm Nick Ebbitt. I'm a software engineer working within the finance sector. I'm involved in the Manchester Java community as a leader. Happy to be here.
And I'm Frank Delporte, technical writer at Azul, with a very big interest in how JUGs are organized and what they actually do. Let's go back to the start of the Manchester JUG. How did it start?
It's coming up to nearly 10 years since the Manchester Java community started. And myself, I've only been involved for about 5 years, and maybe Jonathan around the same or a little bit less.
I think I started attending events around 2017 after I checked my notes.
When I joined, I spoke to, at the time, who was the leader. It was a lady called Alison McGreevy and another lady called Debbie Roycroft. And I think this was in 2013. I think they, just realised that there was a lack of a community in Manchester around Java specifically. So they took it upon themselves to create one. I think there were 4 people at the first meetup, but I think over the months that kind of quite rapidly started to increase. And eventually, they grew a really kind of vibrant community within Manchester. Well, and obviously, it continues today.
And what was the reason for you to join the organization itself to start organizing this JUG?
It came about, it was funny actually, it came about, I think it was in 2017. Heinz Kibbutz, if you've heard of him, he came over to Manchester to the company I was working at and delivered a training course. And as part of that, I managed to arrange for him to speak at the Manchester Java community. He did a great session all around concurrency. And I'd already been going to a few of the events now and again, but this kind of key event with Heinz involved, it just kind of sparked my enthusiasm and my motivation to maybe take that kind of interest of just being an attendee a little bit further. I was quite fortunate that I got an invite to Crete that next year, which is the unconference that Heinz runs in Crete, where he lives. So I went out to there and I came back from there, like just completely inspired by kind of communities, and decided, right, I need to do something more about this, and thought about, right, what can I do? First thing I did was I decided to do a talk at the Manchester Java community. So I did that talk. It went reasonably well, just a short lightning talk. But on the back of that, Alison, who was one of the key leaders at that time, came and spoke to me, gave me a bit of feedback and asked if I'd be interested in getting a bit more involved. So for me, that was like, yeah, definitely, straight away, got involved and kind of started there just by helping out in and around the events and, doing a bit of introducing and that kind of thing to start with.
Same for you, Jonathan. How did you start?
I think it's interesting what Nick said then. Every time I'd come to a Manchester Java community event, I'd always leave feeling very inspired and re-energized. And I'd been thinking about how the Java community, how I'd benefited so much from it throughout my professional career. And I felt like I wanted to do something to give back to the community. So I suppose this is being involved in the local Manchester community is my way of paying it forward, I guess.
How many sessions do you do per year?
Pre-COVID times, we had a pretty regular kind of pattern of one per month. Obviously, at that time, they were pretty much all in person. I think through the last couple of years, it's gone a bit more ad hoc, and because there's a lot more flexibility around times and people being available, I'd say we still kind of kept probably on average about one per month, I would say. Do you think, Jonathan, is that about right?
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah.
Sometimes more, sometimes less.
And is it a big community?
In terms of meetup kind of membership, we're looking at about 1,400, 1,500 people. As everybody knows, that doesn't equate to active members. So I think in reality, if we were to look at attendees of meetups on that monthly basis, we range really, and it kind of depends on the topic, but we usually get between 10 and upwards to like 40, 50 people. Sometimes, often it's around the middle, but, so I'd say a bit of a range, but 30, 40 people is probably the average.
Yeah, it's fun if you see Twitter pictures of JUGs. it's always a very different amount of people joining. Sometimes it can be a very hard topic, I guess, with only 10 or 20 people. And then the popular topics where there are a lot of more people joining. And what is the format that you use? Is it 1 or 2 speakers? Is it a fixed format?
So I think that's been a bit of variety, really. I think when we were doing a lot of in-person meetups early on, we tried to do like a lightning talk coupled with a longer talk. So that would usually be 2. Once we kind of went more remote over the past couple of years, it's pretty much just been the 1 talk for that whole session. I suppose one of the kind of nice things about going to that more remote nature is that allowed us to start creating content that we could share on our YouTube channel. So that's something we'd never really kind of been able to, well, we probably could have done it previously, but it's never been as easy to do, because you have to have that kind of more audio visual kind of skill, set something up for an in-person meeting to record it and then publish it. But once, Zoom just makes that really easy, just to hit the record button, get some content, do some minor editing, and then, publish it to our community.
I think if people are interested in starting a JUG, I think it's a learning curve, I guess. Starting from your first event and having only a few visitors, I suppose, to having really a big community around you.
Sometimes it doesn't matter how many people turn up to those events, so I wouldn't let numbers put you off. Sometimes, the best events I've been to where there are only a few people and you have some great conversations at those events. It doesn't always have to be, or it doesn't, the number of people doesn't define the success of an event sometimes. I think that's important to remember if you're starting out on this road.
Yeah, I love the ethos from the open spaces or unconference kind of scene where, the people who turn up are the right people, whatever happens. And I think we've kind of embraced that a lot with the events that we run. We try not to get too stressed or worry about, are there going to be a lot of people there or not? We just we go, we have fun, we learn. And I think what you find is if you've got 5 people there, they're usually the 5 most enthusiastic people who could be there. So it just works, which is great for us.
Yeah, and as I heard, most of the times the drink afterwards could be more important than the talk itself.
That's true.
That's true. Very true.
Can you remember the most remarkable session for you? Could be the one where everything went wrong.
I think the most remarkable for me that I attended was probably when Josh Long visited us. And he talked and did demos for, I want to say, close to 3 hours. It was definitely our longest talk I've ever attended. And the only reason he had to stop was because the building wanted to close, and the security had to literally kick us out. But he could have carried on and on and on. And nobody wanted to leave. It was definitely a unique experience.
I felt really awkward, because I was the one there just kind of trying to get his attention with my hand saying, they're trying to kick us out here. We need to leave. But I agree. That was a great event. I think from my perspective, one that this was a speaker who I've always watched their talks, and it's Venkat. So Venkat Subramanian. I think he was consulting at a local company, and so we managed to get really lucky that he was in the area, and we got him on to speak. I just remember the first thing he did was he walked into the room, kicked off his shoes, started his presentation. He was just walking up and down with his socks on, making himself right at home. Really, and it was just, he's such an engaging speaker, and just to see him in person and get to know him that little bit and just learn a bit more about him as a person rather than this kind of rock star, let's say, was really good.
Yeah, I've seen both of them just recently at Devox in Belgium, and I'm really wondering what these people are eating and drinking. They have so much energy. They have also the ease of use, how they dare to do live programming and stuff like that. But it's also a matter of experience, I guess.
It's a lot of skill, a lot of practice, no doubt. But there's some natural ability there, I think, that they've just got that not everybody has.
Now, these are the top-notch speakers, the crème de la crème, as they would say in France. Do you have some kind of, like in the Netherlands, they have this program that they organize from the NL JUG to guide new speakers? Something you have done?
This is I suppose, a bit of a topic for me, which I think we have not done great at over the past few years. And there's kind of different reasons for that. So pre-COVID and maybe a couple of years before that, we did pretty well with the local community of getting, even like myself, for example, giving people opportunities, getting them involved. Maybe that's like the lightning speaker slots, and get a new speaker involved and helping them, giving them maybe a little bit of coaching here and there to get them to that level of having enough confidence and about their presentations and things. But yeah, over the last few years, I think time is been a big thing with us as a community. Like lots has been going on, and being able to kind of put on events, but then also do the other bits and pieces around the edges that really give back to the local community. I feel like we've kind of lost that a little bit over the last 2 or 3 years. And it's something that I think is really important. And I think Jonathan touched on it before around paying it forward. Like for us as leaders of the community, it's up to us to kind of really get out there, speak to the local community, try and get people involved in different ways. So 2023 is the year of reconnecting with Manchester as a community. I think COVID and remote meetups have just naturally taken us away from that connection to Manchester. It's become more of a, we'll do events, we'll put them on YouTube, and it's more of a global audience. But I think for me personally, making it a Manchester thing again and really kind of getting the Manchester back into the Java community is what it's about for next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those after event talks are some of the best, some of the best things that happen at an event for me. Where you have a random conversation with somebody you've never met before, and you really connect with somebody. And I think that's something that I definitely lost or missed when we went to doing online only events through the pandemic. And that's something I'm eager to get back to as much as possible.
We tried a few times, didn't we, with like extending the online kind of meetup by maybe 20 minutes for, I suppose, more of a little bit of networking. But I think the problem with a video call is that you've always got the focus of one person who's talking. Like you can't have you can do breakout rooms and things like that, but it's not as easy to create that natural branching out of different conversations and people just mixing. So yeah, I think like as good as you can get it to a certain level of quality in terms of online, but you just never get that real kind of authentic feeling of it being that in-person kind of style meetup.
There's definitely a pre and a post-COVID era here.
Yeah.
I wanted to do JUGs just before COVID started. The COVID gave me the opportunity to talk virtually around the world. That's something that would probably not have happened otherwise. But yeah, being in person and virtually, it's a major difference.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And it's not to say that, through the pandemic, we've had some speakers that gave talks for us that we wouldn't have necessarily had over because they weren't in Manchester for a specific professional reason, and that we could maybe piggyback on, as Nick said about Venkat. So it has opened up doors to having some other speakers on at the JUG who've been able to give a talk that we wouldn't necessarily have had. So there are some benefits in that. Mm-hmm. There's a desire to get to build that community again, build that local community, which is where it originally started.
I don't think we'll stop doing the online events, but I think we'll kind of aim to choose online or virtual sessions that are a bit more unique. So what we found is that you can get the speakers who are doing the conference circuit and you can get their talks, but every other kind of community is getting the same talk. So it feels a bit, I suppose, flooded in terms of the same content being out there and being kind of republished every few weeks when and that's great for the speaker. But I think for us as a community, we want to kind of have our content to be a little bit more unique. So we started doing a few things through COVID where I suppose the sessions were a bit more like Q&A based. So we get a speaker on. We had Ron Pressler on, who came on quite early in, I suppose, obviously Project Loom's still something that's kind of in progress. And but he came on probably about a year or so ago and is talking about the progress of the project. So that was kind of a really good I think Jonathan hosted that. That was a conversation between Jonathan and Ron talking about the project and really learning a bit more of the details. So that was really positive. I think we've had similar kind of form. We had James Goff on early in 2020, similar kind of structure. So I think for me that's the kind of event where I think it's a bit, I suppose, a bit more like a podcast like this, where you're having a conversation, you're learning a lot about the person as well as the projects that they work on. I think that gives it that interesting, slightly different take, which I think is quite nice.
If you have local speakers, do they talk about a certain technology, or for instance, how they solve the specific problem in their company or in the project that they are working on?
I suppose it's a good question, because it comes back to, I suppose, maybe our lack of ability to get local speakers on in recent times. But yeah, I think, like, if I was to think back to most of the local speakers that we've had on, have been sharing their experiences within their, I suppose maybe it's within their work environment, working on specific problems. I think I quite like those kind of more like experience reports, let's say, rather than here's a product and I'll show you how it works. This is like, here's a product and this is what I learned from using it, or this is how I experienced a specific kind of situation. I think for the kind of local speakers, I think something that's worked really well in the past, we've done lightning talk events where every single talk is a lightning talk, and we do like 5 or 10 minutes. And we don't always stick, we don't necessarily stick to Java as being the theme. And I think that creates a good, diverse set of talks, to be honest, because you'll get somebody talking a little bit about Agile. I remember we had somebody on talking about their apprenticeship with a company and what they learned from being an apprentice and why other people should do the same thing. But then, yeah, you have some really good technical Java talks mixed in there as well. And it makes for a really good event, in my opinion.
Yeah, something I learned in DevOps was people telling me, yeah, I am a Java developer. I'm already doing this for years, but it's only now that I learn about Project Loom or all this new stuff that's happening in Java 15, 16, 17. We are still stuck 8 or 11. So yeah, it's for some programmers who are really focusing on the job, coming to this kind of talk, they can really, I didn't know that this already existed.
I mean, that's an interesting thing, because I've thought about this a few times. So, like, I've recently joined an organization that's pretty large, talking like 10,000 engineers. And what you find is that inside these organizations, sometimes, like, especially like more junior people, it's all they know is what their company does, not necessarily what you could do outside of that company. And that's where I think we fit in, isn't it, as a community, and different things like DevOps conferences. It's almost like showcasing what you could do, rather than being kind of helping people open their minds a little bit to the options and the potential that's out there.
One other area that I've maybe over the past few years I've come to appreciate when I've been seeing other people's talks is talks on maybe not that hardcore technical aspects, but maybe on soft skills, how to improve maybe presentation skills, given talks. Some of those talks I've found are just as valuable to me professionally as the latest and greatest Java framework or Java library. And I do find them quite interesting. So we've had a couple of talks given where somebody's how to improve yourself generally, which can be just as good as any other talk.
Yeah, also a question I heard was improving yourself, but then also on very deep specific topics of Java. I'm doing this or this, like database stuff, that you can really get some insights in. How does this actually work? If you use this code, what does it do behind the scenes? And some people are also really interested in this deep dive technical stuff, but I'm not sure that will attract a lot of people. And that's probably something, you have to fight against. Is this a good idea for a JUG if not a lot of people show up, or combine it with a popular talk, maybe? It's
something interesting. We've, over the past maybe couple of years, noticed that there is a definite desire, at least within our community, for almost a desire for core Java talks. So one of the most well-attended events we had over the past 18 months was a talk on Java streams. So it's a very, very specific area of Java, but that had one of the best attendance rates we've had. So there's obviously a desire there for some core Java to be talked about in more detail?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges I've found, like with planning the events, is you've almost got to think for it, try and think what other people might want to see rather than yourself. I remember, I think it was around the beginning of 2020. Obviously, everything was going crazy in the world, and from a leadership perspective, it literally at the point it literally became just me as the only person organising, and I realised that. Well, I wanted to keep the Manchester community kind of going. So we had like this kind of heartbeat while everything was locked down. We wanted to keep something there just to keep the community going. But I realised that with just me thinking about these things, there's a couple of problems there. I'd be a single point of failure for the community. So if something happened to me, the community would stop. But also like my ability to kind of, I suppose, think more diversely and, is limited, obviously. So I made it a really kind of key objective for, I suppose, that first few months of lockdown to try and start to think about how we could, go away from it just being me and expand it out to a wider leadership team. So we started doing, I think the first thing I did was I set up an event called a community discussion. So this was an online session that we published onto our YouTube channel. There was an opportunity for anybody to join who was interested in the Java community and just start, to start off with, it was just let's have a chat, think about what people want, try and get some new ideas. And my kind of ulterior motive there was to actually get other people to help organise the events. And quite fortunately, Jonathan came to that. And there's a couple of other people as well. There's Craig McDonald and David Underwood, who are two other leaders of the community. So they've got involved. Now, I would say we're not very diverse yet as a leadership kind of team, but at least we've got 4 different people now who are helping to kind of organise things and helping to think about the content that we produce. But I think we need to kind of push that even further and really kind of think about trying to make that leadership team more diverse, getting more people involved who want to contribute from different backgrounds, whatever it may be. Because I think only then will we start to really kind of tick the boxes around creating content for different types of people rather than just, maybe the more senior kind of engineer level where, I might be really interested in something deep and technical, but actually for somebody just starting out in the career, that's way too far. They want that 101 in kind of maybe a Java topic that gets them off the ground and gets them really kind of motivated, interested.
Talking about diverse, how is this between your visitors? Male, female, young, old?
Yeah, I'd say predominantly male. Probably quite reflective of the industry, I suppose, as it is, to be honest. So predominantly male. We do have we do get some female kind of people involved and attendees, and but yeah, it's something that we don't do a great job of in terms of like that diverse attendance. We definitely get a diverse. I'd say we get diversity in terms of age and kind of all kind of seniority. We probably get diversity in terms of backgrounds or ethnicity and things like that. But the gender kind of point is a bit more. Yeah, we don't do a great job of that. Yeah. The honest thing.
But what I hear about Java being popular with younger developers, that's also something we should, as a community, probably work on. But it also depends on education. What the universities are using as a language is definitely a topic.
From what I understand, there's quite a bit of focus on that, isn't there? Currently in the Java, I suppose. I've seen some things. I think it might be Brian Goetz with a focus on trying to make it easier for people to just write simple programs without the overhead of
the class and the main and yes.
Yeah. So it sounds like a great kind of initiative, and hopefully that puts Java in a place where universities think, that is a good option here because our developers or our students can get up and running really quickly.
I love jbang in that way. It also helps you to run simple Java as one file. Yeah, there are some nice evolutions. And indeed, I guess that's what JUGs are also meant for, spreading the love for Java.
Yeah, I mean, like getting back to in person, I think that's something hopefully we can, like in the past, we've done kind of workshop style events where we've been like hands-on, everyone brings a laptop and we do katas and stuff. For me, that's like they're some of the best events because you really kind of interact with people, you really talk and work together to solve problems. So hopefully we can get some of those back in place next year as well.
Do you have a fixed location for your JUG?
We've been quite lucky that we've got a number of companies in the Manchester area that are willing to make their office space available to us. And thankfully that's continued on after the COVID pandemic has kind of got back to normal. So we've still got a good selection of companies who are willing to host events for us around the Manchester area.
Mm-hmm. How do you arrange that? Is such a company the host of the evening, or do they also give a talk?
I think that kind of depends. Sometimes they're just hosts. You know, they kind of offer their space, and I think obviously the nice benefit they get if they've got, you know, usually they've got really nice space. People come in, see it, and think, oh, this is a nice place. Maybe I could work there one day, and that's the kind of benefit they get. Sometimes they have speakers who would kind of say things, but that's not always the case, and usually it just depends on the company really. We spent a long time just at one company where we kind of did events there every single month, and it was good because it was convenient and it was consistent. I think since COVID, we haven't got that kind of one place anymore. But I think the nice thing about that is now we can have there's a bit of variety there. It takes a bit more management though from the leadership team. So that's the trade-off there. We kind of sacrifice a bit of simplicity, but we also get lots more kind of variety and maybe more diversity through moving around a bit and trying out kind of different spaces.
As being the organizer of the JUG, how much effort does this take you? Is this not a full-time job, but is this a job? Do you consider it as a job to be done?
Closer to an event, the amount of work ramps up. So, you know, there are, as we've just discussed, some hosts, they're great in just taking care of providing maybe drinks and food for the event. And that's a great help when they take that off your plate. In person, there is a little bit more logistical jobs that need to be done. You know, obviously online events, it was a case of creating an event in Zoom and publish on Meetup, and then everybody turns up or they don't. So there is an element of work, but we try to, as Nick said earlier, we try to, you know, share the work out, you know, share the load between the team that's, you know, trying to organize these events wherever possible.
I suppose what comes with being involved in a JUG is that sense of responsibility. So like sometimes things are kind of easy and they just happen, but when they're not going so smoothly, you do feel responsible, and you kind of have to then just put in that extra bit of time. And like for myself, and I think I'd speak for probably Jonathan and the other two people involved as well, this is something we do on the side of a 9 to 5 day job as well. So sometimes it can take, you know, a few hours a week out of your personal time. And then if you've got, you know, children and other commitments that are on the side, it can get a bit busy at times. But I think the payback you get is when obviously you're at that event, that in-person event or that virtual one, and you get good attendance, you see people happy and giving you good feedback, and it's kind of all worthwhile after that. So you kind of accept a bit of stress, a bit of kind of busyness at times, but it's all worth it, I think, in the end.
You forget about all those headaches at the end.
You do. For me, there's like just being involved in communities, you get so much more out of it than you put in anyway, just through the general, you obviously you get the feeling of satisfaction that you're helping a community. So I think that's good first and foremost, but for me, it just creates more opportunity as well. And that kind of makes you more busy sometimes, again, even further. But, you know, usually they're good opportunities. They're opportunities that help you kind of grow your personal kind of life in terms of your career and things like that. So, yeah. I'm not trying to sell communities, but if I was going to say something to anybody, I'd say, you know, get involved in them and see what, put a bit in and you'll get a lot out. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's also what you see with the speakers at these big conferences. They started at a JUG most of the times, doing local talks. And I think that's a very good thing to get into the community, get experienced in talking and standing in front of an audience. Yeah. If someone is interested in the Manchester JUG itself, so how do they subscribe? How do they follow you?
we're on Twitter. We are MCR Java on Twitter, MCR for Manchester. We've got YouTube channel, so that's Manchester Java Community on YouTube, and we're on Meetup, so you'll find us on Meetup as well. I think those are probably the 3 key places you would find us.
Okay, and we'll add all these links to the show notes with this podcast that people can easily find them. Next to the JUG itself, do you organize something else around this?
I think it was back in 2018, we decided to run an unconference style event. So that we gave that the name jmanc, so Manc short for Manchester. And yeah, I think the first event we did it on a weekend, we did it on a Saturday, and we got about 40 or 50 people. And it was just, for me, it was just an amazing day. Everybody who was there was so enthusiastic and engaged. We were on conference. The content is created on the day, so it was like lots of great ideas. We had a full day full of sessions of different kinds of content, different groups breaking out, talking about things, and that's something then we decided to take forward. So we ran it again in 2019. Again, good turnout, great success, and then obviously we keep coming back to this problem of COVID, don't we? But obviously everything stopped for a while. So this year, back in probably about 3 or 4 months ago now, we thought, right, is it the right time to bring jmanc back? So we decided to give it a go, and we planned to run the event on October the 22nd. So we kind of got everything up and running in terms of like marketing, promoting it, and trying to get the word out. But what we found was that it came to about like a week or 2 before the event was going to happen, and we didn't really have that many people registered. So we had to kind of really think about, do we just go ahead or not? And we decided, because there were a few different kind of people or companies who were helping us, we're going to have financial commitments at some point pretty soon. We decided that for whatever reason, the timing wasn't right. And we think there's probably a number of factors to that. In Manchester specifically, there was some other events going on. But yeah, we couldn't really put our finger on the exact reason. Maybe it was because it was on a Saturday and people had now decided that weekdays were a better timing. So we decided to say, right, let's just admit defeat this time, but let's have a think about maybe bringing it back again in 2023. So what's really kind of cool is that through kind of coming onto this podcast, I looked back to when exactly the first event was, and it was in May 2013. So actually next year is our 10-year anniversary. So what better timing to bring back jmanc? I think, roughly the timings we've run it in the past have been, May, June time. So again, almost kind of landing exactly on when our 10-year birthday would be. So yeah, watch this space. But I think that's something we're going to start talking about fairly soon, and maybe kind of start to get some plans in place early, like next year, so we can give ourselves a really good amount of time to promote it, let people know it's happening, make sure we avoid any clashes with other events, it's always a bit of an experiment. It's hard to know what kind of engagement we'll get, but hopefully we could make a success of it next year.
And one of the things we're also going to try and do is, in the meantime, is try and get that in-person events really going again, build up that community engagement that we had prior to the aforementioned COVID pandemic again, when we were able to run jmanc a couple of times.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So maybe that is another factor, that we have lost that connection. In that 3 years, there's been a lot more, probably hundreds, thousands of new engineers have either started working in Manchester or just started working in general, come out of university and things. So maybe they don't even know who we are because we've not been in person in Manchester. So yeah, finding that connection again, hopefully will help us then establish that core community that will attend something like jmanc going forward.
Yeah, there's definitely a few years that were totally lost in this community and in-person stuff that needs a new build-up, I guess.
Yeah. It's not a complete reset, but there is an element of starting again a little bit and thinking about what was unique about us as a community that kind of differentiates us from just being an online event that publishes kind of content on YouTube. So yeah, that's the challenge.
Well, it's a nice challenge, and it sounds like a perfect birthday party.
Yeah.
If you can launch that again in the beginning of next year. Conference will not get started yet, so I think it should be easy to find a time slot, which is
I think that was another factor, wasn't it? I think like autumn, like October, November is conference season, from what I understand as well. So I think Java 1 was happening. Like,
it was huge. I was at DevOps in Antwerp, and then you had Java 1 the week after, and there was another conference at the same time, also in the US. So a lot of speakers really had to choose their battles and where they were focusing on. Yeah, everyone wanted to restart this conference at the same time.
Everybody's got the same desire as us.
Everyone wanted to have his event back. And now, just practically, how do you organize this? You said before you had a community call to involve more people. How do you do this practically? How do you organize this?
I think Nick initiated, again, back at the start of the COVID pandemic, was to try and open up the organization of the JUG. So we do try to do everything in public. So we have a GitHub project board for the JUG, where we try to come up with ideas for new talks, or to track where we're up to in arranging events, maybe liaising with a speaker, getting a date in mind, arranging a venue. So we try to encourage anybody else, if they have any ideas about, or they themselves would like to talk, that GitHub board is open for them to utilize. And we've tried to, again, as Nick said earlier, we try to host community discussions where we are very open about discussing about what we need to do, what's happening, what's in the pipeline for talks. Have we got any ideas, any other initiatives we'd like to maybe look at trying to do? We do this in our spare time. So it's, as much as where we can get as much help as we can is always going to be a bonus for us. But that's how we try to organize events.
We're definitely great with ideas. It always comes down to the execution and having the time to actually do them, where we sometimes kind of struggle, but I think we've always got things that like we want to do. So this is, I suppose, kind of a call to kind of the community, really, like people with the Manchester community, or even a little bit wider, if you'd like to get involved in a community and help, we'll find ways that we can kind of make that so.
Nice call to everyone listening and from Manchester. Please join at least a session and maybe more. Okay, we'll also add the link to this GitHub project.
That sounds good.
So you are the Manchester JUG, or you're really Manchester only, or how do you do this with the rest of England?
Yeah, so we are Manchester only, but we do work closely with the other communities within the UK. So the London Java community, who was founded by Barry Cranford like quite a good few years ago, they're great. They provide us so much support. They help us out with different things like our meetup kind of fees and things like that, which we really appreciate. And then there's the Dublin JUG. So a guy called Barry Alistair, he helps organise that. And again, I suppose our relation with Dublin is they often get rockstar speakers over. I don't know how they do it, but they're always getting great speakers. But what they try to do is include us in that and try and organise like mini tours of the UK. So speakers, when they come over, especially if they've travelled a long way, it's not just for that one event. They can tie in a trip to Manchester. They can also go to London and do a few other things at the same time. I think that's pretty cool that, amongst not just, Manchester, but throughout the UK, we can all work together. We're not, it's not about, we're not competing. We're all part of this one bigger community where we all help each other succeed ultimately, and work together to create a better, Java ecosystem for everybody.
Yeah, one of the big benefits of the Java community, it's really open and everyone wants to cooperate and make the best of what is available.
Definitely.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for joining me virtually in this trip around the world from JUG to JUG. We'll see where we end up next month. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
Give me a Foo, give me a J, give me the friends of OpenJDK.